All right, it looks like we're ready to get started. Good afternoon, everyone. It is 1:07 p.m. on Thursday, April 10th, and I'm calling this meeting of CDA's Selection Committee to order. My name is Noel Pfeffer. I lead the city's Community Development Administration. Jackie, could you please call the roll?
Sure. Committee member Ingracia,
Present.
committee member Alexander,
Present.
committee chair Pfeffer.
Present. I'll just make a point of order to note that committee member Kyung, representing the mayor's office, is running late, but asked us to move forward if we have a quorum, which we do, with 3 of the 5 members being present. And then Larry, who represents the comptroller's office, unfortunately will not be able to join us today. So with that, we can move on to the first item on our agenda, which is an interview with the Lamar Johnson Collaborative. The Lamar Johnson Collaborative submitted a response to our request for qualifications for green infrastructure design and construction management services, and this selection committee shortlisted them as a qualified respondent. And so with that, we're excited to hear from you and to hear more about your experience, qualifications, portfolio of projects, and anything else you wish to share with us. And if you'd like to present, we'll then follow up at the end with a few questions.
Yeah, thanks so much. And so I'll probably have us stay in this format to introduce us, and then we'll shift to our presentation if that's okay.
That sounds great.
Yeah, so my name is Chip Crawford. I'm a landscape architect, planner, and senior principal here at the Lamar Johnson Collaborative. We are super thrilled that we made the cut to at least have this conversation with you. We're so excited about the potential of this project, and we're excited to share the experience that we have in similar work like this. Matt or Neil?
Go ahead, Neil.
Oh, thank you. Good afternoon, Neil Eisenberg, Principal Senior Landscape Architect with Lamar Johnson Collaborative. Just echoing Chip's sentiment, just excited to be able to share our team's qualification with you today. Matt?
Good afternoon, everyone. Matt Maranzana, landscape architect and horticulturist here with LJC, and I'll pass it off to Chris.
Hey everyone, I've met some of you before, so good to see you again. Chris Sanders, landscape architect here with LJC. Really excited to dig into this and very excited that the city is taking a look at this very important work. So thank you.
Thank you all. We're also joined, I should note again for the record, by our partners at the planning department, and they really have been instrumental in helping us design this request for qualifications and our green infrastructure strategy more broadly.
All right, fantastic. Well, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And okay, everyone seeing that? Oops.
Yes, we can see that.
Okay.
Are you gonna? Okay, there we go. All right, well, one point of clarification that I wanted to make in our introduction is that we submitted as a standalone landscape architecture firm because we think a lot of our work is completely relevant to what you're trying to accomplish. We didn't feel that we met all of the detailed criteria in the HUD grant processes, but we've worked on HUD grants and we've also worked on many other grants. Most of our work is in the public realm and has had some sort of grant funding. So we are very familiar with the process and all that. We just couldn't check the box specifically for all the experience in the HUD grants that you described. But if there's a way or a desire for you to partner us to another firm, we're totally open for that in any way that we can be helpful. So I just wanted to open with that. So we submitted as a standalone landscape architecture practice, which is really focused on that. So we're part of the Lamar Johnson Collaborative, which is a larger multidiscipline design firm located in 6 cities in the country. We're based in St. Louis. Chris is out of our Kansas City location, but has completed and worked in St. Louis many years and completed some of the work that we're going to show you together. And of course, I think it's most important, like some of you may know LJC, but you might not know that we have a really focused group really on the public realm with expertise in planning, landscape architecture, and urban design. And you can begin to read all of the ways that we get involved in different kinds of projects. But we have a full team that speeds to work every day, worried about the environment, how we can make life better on this planet and all natural systems working to our benefit. And so we really do planning, landscape architecture, and urban design at many, many scales. And so we've been really, really fortunate on some of the larger scale regional plans in St. Louis and around the world, ranging from the GRG master plan to what the original Shoto Lake plan was, and are currently leading the Brickline project connecting the communities. We've had a lot of projects that were large scale, sort of from the outside in. And so we bring that. I know you're tying this to another RFP for the regional plan, and I just wanted to be sure you understood that we can also help think in that scale as well. And then, of course, landscape architecture, the built work is our passion. And we do all the planning work so that we can get to that and actually build things. And we've been really, really fortunate to build some significant projects, all of these in St. Louis. And then because so many of our projects are in urban environments, we have a lot of other expertise from architects and others in terms of entitlement and urban planning, design guidelines, community building, neighborhood making, things like that. So we bring that knowledge as well. And of course, this is the team. There's 18 of us right now. Again, as I mentioned, I hope you get a chance to work with them. I have the benefit of enjoying their brilliant thinking every day, and I hope you get to experience that as well. And then really a shout out to our clients. We can't do anything without great clients, and we've been really, really fortunate to be recognized with over 90 design awards with our clients, including 4 national ULI awards. And so we're really thrilled. Your mission is our mission. We're here to serve you and get you what you need and ensure that there's a positive outcome. And of course, all of our projects are really, from our perspective, trying to connect to the natural systems that we know provide more knowledge and a better way to solve some of the urban issues that we have. So we're going to talk specifically about the projects that are most like yours. So you might know some of these things better than others specifically, but we are in the stormwater management business in terms of all of our projects for the most part, whether they're multiple scale, large acres, parks, public spaces, or whether they're individual sites. And these are some of the issues that we know are critical. In this case, the acute flooding that bore this grant. The scale of these projects is incredible. You know, safety, security, managing the risk, the sustainability, and the nature-inspired design techniques are all things that we think can help that. But with climate change, resiliency is huge. St. Louis really needs this project bad from our perspective. And of course, all the real technical things, you know, the aging infrastructure, the loss of room for some of these systems in parts of our community, the funding constraints, you know, working with MSD, those are all things that we deal with in a lot of our projects. And so we also have tools. We use large scale planning tools, GIS and others. We thought this project was particularly interesting. We had looked with St. Louis County at a sort of regional park master plan, and we were beginning to look at the natural systems, particularly the impact of flooding. For a long time, our practice has been focused on not just the water, but the watershed, the cultural attributes of the watershed that we can also bring to life in our project design. And of course, the natural systems associated with that. We've all lived here through the floods. We understand the issue. And so just real quickly, I think that's the majority of our interest is that we're in this. All of our projects are impacted by the decisions that we make around critical stormwater management. We also know that there's a great opportunity, and we're excited to share with you some projects where we not just solved the stormwater problem, but it became a cultural solution and a solution that brought our community together. And so the equitable planning and solutions that we can pull together, we're excited to share. And then, of course, all the resilient infrastructure. We think that that's really one of the most important things that we can use to build our community. And of course, we have a robust experience in creative placemaking, placekeeping, and really what we call now meaning making. So many of these sites have a history that we can actually, convert to a celebration instead of a challenge.
No, thanks, Chip. And real quickly, I want to kind of walk you through our design approach. And really, this design approach, we always like to say this chip described projects, this approach doesn't matter if it's a half acre little pocket park or if it's a large regional master plan. It's the same approach we have for all projects. And it's based on five phases, starting with discovery. And with this project, you're almost at a smart start for the team that would be doing sort of the next level, as you've already sort of have this established regional plan in place. So understanding that plan's impact and how we look at spaces is going to be a way which we've already sort of jump-started our discovery. And then really, with the discovery, the next is like, what do we do with this information? We need to analyze it, understand all the impacts, obviously the stormwater impacts, the community impacts during that analysis phase. And it's really, as you see that diagram, we're sort of growing as we get to the center is that ideation phase. And that's really where we start developing the concepts, right? We take on all the information that we've learned in the discovery, in the analysis, and at that ideation phase, sort of take on the largest amount of understanding from you all, from the community, from engineers, agencies, all that. Sort of take that information, and as we come back down, we know we need to refine it, develop a preferred approach, a preferred direction to move forward, and ultimately at the end, we know we're accountable to you all to meet everything with on time and on budget with documentation and everything necessary to deliver a plan, deliver construction documentation and management to get to where we need to go. And all of this, as you see at the bottom, is based on engaging with the community, engaging with you all as well in our ask, align, and acting. So at the beginning, obviously, asking all the questions that we need to ask, right? Understanding all impacts. Then, alignment, coming back with something that aligns everybody. Aligning agendas, obviously, is the biggest thing on any project that we need to do, like I mentioned, in any scale. And ultimately acting, right? Once we've asked you all, we've aligned with everybody, we need to act. As Chip mentioned, our main goal is always to build something really impact the community. And so all those different layers of sustainable infrastructure, planning, landscape architecture come together and are woven together as our approach.
Thanks, Neil. I'm going to talk a little bit about the tools in our toolbox for solving some of these stormwater issues. And as a person who spent a portion of my career as a water conservation specialist for the state of Kansas, it's so exciting for me to be a part of a team like this and see all these great minds working together to leverage these tools and find creative ways to solve some of these challenges that we all face. I'm a resident or a native resident of the St. Louis region. I grew up over in St. Charles, and I kind of intimately understand what some of these localized flooding events can do to a community. What you see on the screen here is an example of how we can leverage both soft natural systems as well as hard engineered systems to start to reduce stormwater and create kind of resilient green infrastructure solutions moving forward. This project was actually a commercial development that we had the opportunity or the blessing to come in and take a look at from a renovation perspective. How can we reimagine this site that's still going to continue to serve its purpose as an office building? It's still going to turn over a high number of volume of vehicles every day. But how can we create a space that not only solves the stormwater issues, but makes it a place that people want to be, that they feel invited to come into? So, here you can see we took and basically reduced the stormwater burden of this site by 33% through some strategic interventions that softened the site. We introduced some native vegetation. We introduced some bioretention. There's permeable paving as well as subsurface detention. So by using a combination of both engineered solutions as well as natural solutions, nature wrote that playbook long before we were here. So if we can find creative ways to leverage those tools, we can really make some successful impacts to a site throughout the urban environment. And that's one of the things that we take a lot of pride in, is how can we mold the nexus between the built environment where people live and the natural systems that were here before we ever touched the land. So one of the ways that we do that is through landscape performance. Here you can see some of those second and third order benefits of leveraging high performing landscapes. I think we all kind of inherently know that, if we use native plant materials with robust root systems, they can promote infiltration. They can really pull water off the surface. They could create, a robust impact to the pollinator population. But what do they start to do from a human perspective? And, one of the things that we see is that they reduce rental vacancies, increases property values, and it promotes overall well-being of the residents of those communities. And so when you're thinking about a project like yours, it's really impactful in these kind of underserved communities where this may not be the priority for those folks when it comes to development. But if we have the opportunity to solve a stormwater problem right there in the community, these are those kind of second and third order impacts that are going to happen because of that work. And so it's really important for us to leverage these high performing landscapes as a tool in the toolbox to solve some of these challenges. The next thing we'll talk about is ecological services. So what does that mean, right? Like when we bring a high performing landscape onto a site, what can that actually do from a development or urban perspective? And some of these fun facts over here on the left are from the Landscape Performance series by LAF, and they really jumped off the page to me. For example, when we think of New York, right? Much higher level of density than most of our developments in the Midwest, but even in a city like New York, urban green space can absorb over 40% of that city's atmospheric CO2 emissions on a summer afternoon. Think about the impact that would have in some of our communities in St. Louis, specifically North St. Louis, where we might look at some of these land bank properties and really try to understand how we can reduce heat island, we can increase water conservation, and really have a profound impact on those communities as a result. The last thing we'll talk about here is operations and maintenance. This is kind of inherent to what we do as landscape architects, because we create projects and have visions that aren't kind of measured on a day one performance, right? When you open a robust or really high performing landscape, the first day it's usually it's not developed, it's not grown in. And so over time, our projects really come into their own in that 3 to 5 year range, and even out to 10 years, where you're really starting to see the impacts of these projects. And so it's critically important that we think about operations and maintenance. And that's a language that we speak. Matt mentioned he's a horticulturalist. We kind of have that in our DNA to really understand what it's going to take to get these plants from day one to year 3, where they can, kind of sleep, creep, and leap their way into a high-performing landscape. So this is critical to us. We understand it. We've written landscape performance manuals for folks as well. And then if you look over here on the right, Penn State University, this is an example of how we took the way that this university had been doing business for 100 years, thinking about landscapes, thinking about mowing regimes, and thinking about operations. We were able to overhaul that, come in with some successional planting opportunities, reimagine that green space. And what we found is we had profound impact on energy consumption. We were able to reduce carbon inputs by reducing mowing. They saved over $1 million a year in mowing grass on the site. Really profound impacts that really come from just a different way of thinking about creating space. And we look forward to working with you to do the same thing.
All right, thank you, Chris. So now we're going to jump into a few different projects and just sort of highlight those and get a better understanding of how these relate back to your project. Some of them are a little bit smaller, some are larger. This one is RGA, so this is the corporate campus for Reinsurance Group of America in Chesterfield. This project had a lot of different techniques that we employed, different best management practices for stormwater. A lot of stormwater was captured on the building and on the parking garage. Previously, this site was a greenfield site. I believe it was agriculture, it was being farmed. Interesting, in its location, because there is a lot of development around its edges. In putting a building in this place, what we really wanted to do is minimize maintenance on that site, not have to incur a lot of mowing, have people out, every week for 26 weeks out of the year doing all the things, but rather it's sort of a different strategies in terms of how we think about planting a landscape and seasonal interest. So what we did, we looked at different ways to capture the water on the rooftops, and then create these, call it water runnels, that really reached out and created these different rooms within the landscape, the main view from the amenity deck of this building out over the cafe space, et cetera. And what it does is it activates during rain events. So the water within these basins fills up and it tops over the weir, and it leads on and on until it reaches a larger biofiltration garden at the end of the system. There were 3 of them in total, 2 of these extensions of runnel space. And over time, what these did is they really filled in So the image on the top left is looking at, the image on the bottom left. Top left is, a year later, the bottom is newly planted. It's really grown in and become lush. Again, it's knowing and using the right plant material, designing for salt, designing for, a lot of the things that we need to be planning for, understanding where the water might be coming from, and then allowing, plants that have deep roots that can penetrate soil and can store more water to take a lot of that offline. What we also did is try to integrate this with a larger seeded landscape. So that's what you're seeing, the image on the right is a blend between a biodiverse, call it BMP, and then a more upland seeded landscape.
Thanks, Matt. A little larger scale here, but thinking about stormwater, thinking about flooding. This is the North Riverfront Redevelopment and Open Space Plan. This was done with GRG and with the St. Louis, the Planning Department, as well as SLDC back in 2014. And since then, we've implemented one of the portions of this plan. So this, if you know the full plan, it's a little over 200 acres, looks at green space and looks like redevelopment from Eads Bridge all the way up to the Stan Musial Veterans Bridge. It looks at green space, open space along the Lenore K. Sullivan there, and how open space can obviously serve the community, could also serve an impact by flooding and still have its resiliency. So I'm going to advance to the next page. I think we have another slide here. Thank you, Matt. So this little series of slides, the important part to note about this is that we always knew that this, whatever we do here, obviously we're within the floodway, the floodplain, and knowing that when we implement any sort of open space element, it's going to flood. And so understanding what that means and how we plan for it's important. As you see, as Matt's clicking through the series over the 500-year storm and 100-year, all those as they move, it sort of creeps further in towards Commercial Street. And so understanding the impacts of what we do here and how we can manage hardscapes, softscapes, and plan for that was really important to create those environments, and always knowing that at the end of the day, it's all going to go away, right? And what we're left with is silt and all those type of things and potential damage. So we did a case study of understanding the impacts after the hurricane hit the Houston and the Gulf Coast area in the Buffalo Bayou, which was a large planned area along the river there, and sort of understanding those impacts and how you go back, clean off elements and stuff within the landscape that you need to do. There's a regimen that we need to do. But at the bottom, the most interesting part that we learned is that with our shapes that were informed in our plazas and in our parks and open space was that we needed to look at meandering streams and how nature works instead of just having a straight shot and developing a straight way for the stormwater to make its way through. Unfortunately, what that does, it speeds things up and it keeps pushing the problem down the stream. What we want to do is sort of create shapes and informed our design that actually allow for meandering and allow for places where we could actually take sediment, deposit it in such places that as the water recedes, we're capturing sediment and we can actually kind of get concentrated for cleanup. And so all these impacts about maintenance and design and taking cues from nature were all integrated into this project. You can see some of the diagrams we did of talking about those flows in the upper left-hand corner about how water would flow through there at various stages of flooding. And then you see in the upper right-hand corner about where we deposit a lot of that sediment. It could fall in some of these interior spaces, and then ultimately on the bottom left-hand corner, how we might be able to clean and sort of take that sediment away. And so really fortunate part about this whole project is that we were able to develop a small half-acre parcel up adjacent to the Eads Bridge. It's the first sort of entree into the Mississippi Greenway and into the North Riverfront master plan. This Catherine Ward Bird Garden came out of it. Really exciting part about it is that it's really one of the only areas where you can accessibly get from First Street up on the top of the image there down to Commercial Street. But it also becomes this usable open space, flexible space that the Cleves Landing, as we're going through a renaissance and sort of bringing residences back into the Cleves Landing, it becomes a space to gather, a space to have flexible events. It also incorporates a lot of the native planting that Chris and Matt have talked about. But it's really the shapes, how we've got the curvilinear sort of the hardened edges facing north of the seat wall and that lower platform for events and such. So we're starting to inform those shapes about how flooding and how, like I mentioned before, how the river may impact. And so understanding ultimately how stormwater impacts these sites that we may develop is really critical, and our design should take on what we learn from nature.
Thanks, Neil. So as we think about how stormwater can impact a site, the next project we're going to talk a little bit about is Tower Grove Park East Stream Restoration. Some of you may have seen our presentation on this over at the Grow Native Conference or been on a site tour at this site, but this is something we're really proud of. Actually, you've got most of the team that worked on this here on the call with you today, and we think that this project really checks a few of the boxes as it relates to your specific project in ways that we can target volume reduction, we can increase resilient infrastructure and leverage that as community open space, leverage those public-private partnerships, and really create place, right? A sense of place. This is Tower Grove Park. It's a place that everyone that lives around there really kind of, they refer to it as their backyard. And that really showed as we worked on this site. Every day we were on site, folks were coming up to us, what are you doing to my park? And this is what we did to their park. So if you're familiar with the site, this is roughly the eastern third of the site. It starts up at the Stupp Center and it works its way over towards the Cypress Pavilion. We've got about 1,600 linear feet of daylighted stream. So there was a historic stream alignment here. If you had been in the park before this project took place, you may have seen those head walls that were kind of buried in the turf grass. Folks often, stood on them or sat on them and wondered what they were. Well, those were stream crossings back in the day, roughly 110 years ago. And so we were able to reconnect most of those stream crossings with a mind to the fact that this is a modern day arboretum. So we need to be cognizant of the last 100 years of tree growth in the park. But we were able to create this stormwater intervention that not only treats roughly 44 acres of the project park site, but also treats the surrounding neighborhoods by taking those storm sewers offline and bringing them into this space and treating that water with a natural system. So as we move forward, this is something we want to talk about, is the ability for us to understand the grant funding process and how we can leverage public funds to really create dynamic open space and public space. Now, Project Clear may or may not be directly applicable to all of the sites that we're talking about, but this was a project that it was very applicable for. And so when we went into this, we were actually under the assumption that we were going to receive a fairly small amount of reimbursement money. And so we had a private donor on the side that was willing to put that money forward in order to elevate this park space. And what we found was through actually talking through the engineering process and understanding things like a storm pipe is how you might think of conveyance on a typical project. In our project, in the stream restoration, conveyance really took place in that stream channel. So suddenly the stream channel was able to be reimbursed as the pipe per se. So kind of creating that translation and speaking that language was tantamount to this project. And what it ultimately did is funded most of the project through grant money. We were able to take those private dollars, endow a maintenance scholarship where now they're able to fund permanent staff positions, buy the seed that they need to have to overseed and reseed and maintain the site, and really kind of create a long-term maintenance vision for this site. So that's critically important to us as we think about how money translates into a project. Thinking about the technology matrix, I'm sure you all are familiar with the Metropolitan Sewer District and their toolbox of tools. And these are all engineered solutions that have been vetted, critically reviewed, and they are proven to treat stormwater and manage the issues of localized and regional flooding. And so in order for that project that we were talking about, Tower Grove, to really be qualified for any of that grant money, we needed to show that the tools we were using met all of these objectives. So again, as landscape architects, it was really our job to take these tools, apply them to the site, re-envision them in a way that could be perceived as natural environment, and also within the historic context of the park, a Victorian garden, and make sure that they're doing their job in performing the functions that they were designed to perform. So what that looks like really is this central stream. It starts at this bubbler system. It actually starts at the headwaters, but that's potable water. That's a play feature. Kids can activate that, learn a little bit about fluvial geomorphology, and have a lot of fun. And then as that water moves into the first crossing, we actually installed a bubbler beneath the crossing. So all the storm water coming from the surrounding neighborhoods through head pressure is forced to the surface, we're able to capture that in a channel and move it downstream. Along the stream, we've perched a number of BMPs, right? So you can see all the BMPs kind of pockets look like little kidneys along the stream channel there. And as the water charges that system, when you get to a certain base flow elevation, there's diversionary weirs that pull water out of that channel, fill those basins, and allow the natural systems to go to work. So this is where those rain gardens are really kind of coming into their own. You've got plants that are taking up phytoremediation. They're pulling pollutants out of the water itself. You've got a dynamic soil matrix that's pulling pollutants from the water as it infiltrates. And we'll take a little bit closer look at what that looks like as we move through. But one of the important things is this was designed for that 2-year storm event, and it's never actually exceeded capacity. The overflow valves, even though we got a 500-year storm event in the middle of this, the overflow valves never activated there during that storm event. The site was able to handle that capacity in a robust way. So there's a lot of opportunity in the St. Louis region for us to do things like this to solve some of those stormwater issues. Next, I'm gonna let Matt talk a little bit about the plant strategy here as our resident horticulturalist.
Yeah, so thanks, Chris. The trees you can see up at the top of the screen here, many of those trees were existing trees that we have the availability to 3D scan to understand not only the location and the branching structure, but also then work with the team at Targrove Park, who has a really good, robust catalog of all of their existing trees. So we knew what those critical root zones were based on their diameter of breast height. We did our best to really stay away from those as much as possible. If we had to come in contact with any of them, we worked with them at an arborist level to treat those trees before we did any real moving of soil or earth around those. As we work our way down, though, the trees become this structural layer, the shrubs become that next layer, and the ornamental trees. A lot of this was tied back to the ethnobotanical sense from the Osage. So the plants that were important to them and are still important to them, and their meaning, those are things that we don't know. Those are things that we ascertained from the team that we were working with from the nation. But it was really interesting in terms of placement of those trees, and then all the way down to the ground plane planting. So the image you see sort of floating in the middle with the green and the tan and the darker color, each one of those related to a different plant community. And we had a strategy of plugs and seeded landscape. We worked within each one of those sort of moisture zones. It had to do with soil moisture and water anticipation in terms of inundation, but also trying to understand what some of the existing trees were doing to the ground plane related to solar orientation. So what we ended up with, I think, it works and is working really well. The plants are doing really well. I know that we've worked hand in hand with the team out there, as well as a few other folks here locally to get our arms around the maintenance of this project and to be sure that they have the resources available to go out and get additional seed. The beauty of this is now that because of all of these native plants that we've implemented, others that we brought in that were part of a more diverse mix that were collected with that team out at Shaw Nature Preserve, they already have a really, I think, strong foothold in terms of what they can collect, and now it can be done on site and dried and reused.
Hey, Chris, I know I want to be cognizant of the time, and I know you guys wanted some time for Q&A, so I want to be sure to respect that. I don't, Chris, if you might talk just about the relationship to the Osage, and then we can open up for questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So these next couple slides just kind of diagram how that system I explained works. We can go back and talk to these in more detail if we'd like to. But one of the important aspects of this, as Matt mentioned, is that ethnobotanical aspects and then storytelling and placemaking. The Osage were the Osage Nation were the original inhabitants of this park prior to it becoming a park. So we were able to collaborate with the historians down here in Oklahoma and actually work very closely with them to establish a storytelling opportunity. You saw the standing rocks on that one diagram. that told their story through interpretation through the landscape, as well as a scaled representation of one of their historic villages. So all of that was integrated as part of this stormwater management project, and it really created a compelling experience for the community. Here you can see some quick takeoffs. Missouri Metropolitan Sewer District is actually estimating that we're pulling 3.8 million gallons of water out of the system every year through this project alone. Here you can see a couple of images that help to kind of illustrate how we were able to tie native systems and natural systems back to that Victorian design. This is actually shot on the equinox rising over that village, where you can see the central spine of the village aligning with the sun.
So we could talk about several other projects, but I want to respect the time. And so we'd love to entertain some questions at this point.
That sounds great, and thank you for the presentation and the truly beautiful work. As a resident of Tower Grove South, thank you very much for the amazing work in the park. I'll open it up now to our committee for any questions that the team may have.
Because these sites will be maintained by the city, our maintenance capacity is very constrained. How do you think about maintenance over time? And how do you design with maintenance in mind?
Yeah,
Chris, or sorry, go
I
ahead.
can start. Yeah, I think, you know, that would go back to thinking about how the design blocks are created, the types of plants we need and the types of environments, you know, simplifying the design and the palette so that people understand and know what a plant is versus a weed, essentially what should be there and what should not be there. There are ways that we can make it more diverse, but I think in the terms of making it easier to maintain, I think we would look for, you know, utilizing a more limited palette so that you could tell if something shouldn't be there. And then using plants that are going to be pretty resilient, so more generalist, that they're going to work if they're inundated or if they're on the dry side. There are certain plants that will take that. I think we also need to be cognizant of where these are located in sun or shade. And then being sure that, you know, we're not using nuisance plants or bullyish type of plants, that they all have the same level of sort of commingling, if you will, that they're good neighbors to the others and not overrunning things, and you don't end up with a single species within a certain location. And Chris, I don't know if you have anything else to add.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are all great points, Matt. And I think as we move beyond the plant side of things and really start to think about the people side of things, we want to work with your team. We want to understand what those maintenance and operations capacities are. I was blessed in a past life to actually work with the Board of Public Service on Central Fields in Forest Park. And one of the things I learned through that experience is it really comes down to some of the things you may overlook, but you know, how wide are the decks on the mowers that you're using? How easy is it for your maintenance crews to get onto the site and maintain those structures and those features? Working on the pilot projects for MSD in North St. Louis very early in my career, thinking about forebays and ways that we can pull sediment out of these systems right off the bat so that when your folks come onto site, all they have to do is focus on key areas, right? They're not necessarily touching every square inch of the site. They can come in, they can shovel out sediment in a forebay, in a holding basin, and those infrastructure elements are doing their job to make your life easier, right? So I think it's a collaboration of us doing our job on the design side to make sure that it's designed in an efficient and effective way, and then coordinating with those maintenance teams to really understand what that capacity is and how we can best make use of the space.
Rashonda, you're on mute.
Can you give us some examples of these particular projects with a constrained maintenance and what you learned from them?
Hey, Matt.
Were
it
you all
might
able
be-
to hear me? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yes, I think we got
Okay.
that. Hey, Matt, you might talk about just the origin of the matrix philosophy that you use came from after the bombing in Germany when there was no money to do anything. You might mention
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah, so the other approach to block planting would be more of a what we call a community planting strategy, where you have a more diverse palette of plants. You utilize different plants at different levels, so that the need or the use for mulch is really not necessary. You have plants that are acting as a green mulch. But yeah, as Chip's mentioning, if you go back to after World War II and a lot of those areas in Germany that were being rebuilt, they really wanted to have nice gardens. They wanted to have these nice spaces, but they didn't have enough people to maintain everything. So they were looking to natural systems and community planting styles, where plants that sort of got along well together could work well together and support one another, not only through their what we see above ground, but also what's below ground, because there's so much happening on both sides of that. And it's really about, again, things that work well, that are not too competitive. And I think less is more. Like, there can be beauty in less maintenance, as long as we're maintaining things once or twice a year, and we're knocking out some of the the woody plants and some of those things that may be more troublesome weeds. But I think as things become established, those are fewer and farther in between.
And then, real quickly,
Go
Chris,
ahead,
also touch on a project that we actually currently have under construction that's trying to balance, the sort of maintain landscape beds versus a lawn area, and try to make sure we balance that so it's favorable for maintenance. And that's the Brickline Greenway that we're currently under construction from Jefferson to actually east of Jefferson to the Energizer Stadium, all the way to Compton. And so 1 mile of a greenway plus a linear park. And so in that, we had, as landscape architects and designers, we'd love to plant everything all over the place and have it be full of interesting plant material all over. But I think we had to do was dial it back to meet the needs of GRG and of the city, to really balance the amount between turf maintenance and the amount between planting maintenance, as Matt described it. When we looked at it as more narrowing of planting beds for efficiency, irrigation system, fortunate to have that type of system, so that aided in watering. But balancing turf areas that could be more easily maintained. I know we don't want to have turf areas everywhere, but there's a moment where those type of spaces could play a hand in the sort of a balance of maintenance. So working closely to understand that balance, as Chris had described, with how you maintain it, who maintains it, and making sure everybody's on the same page, because it's so critical for the long-term success of the project. Sorry, Chris.
Yeah, no, all good. And, I think a couple of specific examples of how that has kind of come to light in past projects. One would be something so simple as an operations and maintenance manual that actually shows you illustrations of what plants are supposed to be in the space, so that it's really easy when an operations personnel gets there, they pull up on site, they flip open their notebook, and they have 5 or 6 or 10 plants. They have a picture of it right there, what it's supposed to look like throughout the season. And they can say, hey, I'm seeing something that's not on this list. It's June and it should look like this. That's coming out. And it makes it super easy, right? You don't have to get into the science of the plants. You just know what should be there and what shouldn't be there. Another example would be like forebays, right? It's beautiful for us to have natural limestone forebays and settlement basins and things like that, but it's really hard to get a scoop shovel into those spaces, right? It's really hard to get a skid loader in there and clean them out after 5 years of sedimentation, right? So, a concrete forebay, just putting the bottom of that forebay into a resilient surface that can be easily cleaned, is something that's just a small minor tweak to the detail that leverages dividends on the back end from a maintenance perspective. And the last thing I'll talk about is mineral mulch. This is a kind of a granular detail, but when you think about, a standard MSD spec calls for pea gravel mineral mulch, but pea gravel is a bed load sediment. It moves around when water hits it. And so what we found is if you switch to an angular trap rock, you're performing the same task and goal, but now suddenly the mineral mulch in your BMP doesn't move. And so it locks together. And that's a subtle change that can make a big impact over time, because you're not actually having to go in and move aggregate around in your BMPs once they're installed. So I think, when you think about maintenance, that's something that we really think critically about, and definitely look forward to continuing that conversation.
The last thing I'll add to that is that we are actively involved with projects post-construction. in dealing with any issues that arise, whether it's part of a biofiltration basin or something else on the site. But we actively problem solving those things and working with clients and their maintenance staff, to get it right. It's hard working with natural systems and plants. Things are always changing. They're not static. We realize that. And that's actually one of the fun parts about our job, is that we never really know, right? But we want to always be putting the best foot forward to solve all those issues as best we can.
Amazing. I think our team probably has a bunch of follow-up questions because that's really interesting stuff, but unfortunately we are limited by time. Does the committee have any other questions? I will ask one that we've asked the previous two in the interest of giving you all the opportunity to ask it as well, and that is just St. Louis has a unique hydrology. I think we all know that. What challenges or opportunities does this unique hydrology present?
Chip.
Yeah, so I think some of the answers to that are in the details of what we've already described. I think the real opportunity here that we see is to sort of enlighten the general public in the importance of these projects by designing something that's meaningful to them. Like in the case of Tower Grove, it was the Osage Nation. The concept that we're actually creating a project that's not just about daylighting a stream, but about equity, and not just equity of humans, but equity of all living things, and that we've freed this pipe that's been in prison for 150 years as a narrative that we can build around these projects. There's some other a variety of scales that really take the meaning of the place. Like this issue is happening in a whole bunch of different types of landscapes across and land uses across the city. And I feel like each one has its own story rooted in its own place. And I think one of the things that we can bring, in addition to solving the sort of engineering aspects of the stormwater, is that we can bring it to life in terms of the cultural attributes and get more people caring about it and celebrating the unique, this water that we have. I mean, it blows my mind when you go to places like Vegas and they get 4 inches a year. We got 6 inches last night or whatever. And so I feel like we're comfortable with that. We know that what an asset it is to have that water, but we've got to manage it better in a way that nature approves better. And I think we understand those natural systems and an ability to do that, not just to solve it, but to make it culturally valuable.
And to build on that really quickly, and I think, in addition to understanding that we have a high volume of water coming down, our soils are working against us, right?
Yeah.
St. Louis has a lot of clay, and one thing we know about clay is that it doesn't absorb absorb water at a high rate. And so how do we balance this idea of infiltration and point source solutions that are promoting infiltration into a soil strata that we understand is going to, by and large, work against us, right? And so leveraging Tower Grove Park as an example, that's one where we knew as you move through that soil strata inside of the BMP, you're going to be doing great things. But as soon as you hit the bottom, you're going to hit clay. It's not going to have a high infiltration rate. It's going to pick back up in a perf pipe below grade and re-enter the system downstream. And when it re-enters that system, we actually worked with MSD to put some gate valves in the lower BMPs so the park itself can control that water, turn it on, turn it off, hold water on site when they need to, let water free flow when they need to. And so I think we have to get creative and think about our playbook and how we can solve some of these issues, knowing that clay is a prevalent thing in the whole region.
Absolutely. That makes a ton of sense. Well, thank you all very, very much for your time and for your presentation and for all the wonderful work that you're doing in St. Louis and across the country. We'll be back in touch once the selection committee reconvenes and authorizes us to move forward with contract. And we will let you know within the next week or two.
Yeah. Hey, we really appreciate the opportunity and would love to be a partner with you to solve this.
Wonderful. Thank you all very much again.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much.
Thank
Good
you.
one. With that, I think any discussion or I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
We have a second?
Second.
All right, the motion's been made and properly seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're missing some eyes.
Did everyone say aye?
No, I didn't hear eyes from Grace or Christine, although
Oh, is my mic not working?
you were on mute.
Well, we,
Grace.
I said aye.
Okay,
Okay.
wonderful. And
Thank
I'm gonna
you.
take Christine's departure from the meeting as evidence of her agreement.
well, regardless, we still had a quorum, so we're good.
Wonderful. All right,
Thank
thanks
you.
everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.